the contribution of Christian schooling. Now, you know the contribution of your schools. You see firsthand the impacts. I might go with this lapel here. You could tell the stories and do tell the stories. You're well aware of the, just get these mics right. You're well aware of the impacts that you have, and you see that on a daily basis. But it's nice to get the data, to have that quantitative analysis, that evidence, if you like, that can go out to show the impacts that you see in a report form. And that's what this research is all about. There's a 28-page report that I understand is coming your way if you haven't already received it. And there's also an infographic which might be useful for you just in terms of a summary of that, and that I understand has been sent to you as well. And that can be good to distribute if those that you come across or your team want the distilled version. That is what you have. Go with this one. Fantastic. So you've got that there to unpack, but let me navigate you through it a little bit and give you a sense as to what's in it. Now, this is not just a session to sit back and to soak it up, because in a moment you're going to be asked in workshop form to really unpack some of the key findings. There's a number of themes on it, but I think we've distilled it down for your discussion to 5 key themes for you to analyse and then share feedback, and Ruth's going to lead us through that session a little bit later. But to the methodology, what comprised that? Fantastic, thanks. And for those that like to know the detailed background, you've got that there. We surveyed the parents in your schools, and that was great to get that contribution. Thank you for being involved in the distribution of that. The research was closed out in March. We had a total of 1,083 parents, families participate in this research from 16 of the ACS schools. Now, we've also reanalysed the data in the Cardis Education Survey Australia, and that was conducted in 2019, a survey of almost 5,000 graduates of Australian schools who are now in their adult years. And we just looked at their experience of education across the sectors. The Cardis people conducted that and analysed that, but we've taken that data and done some analysis as well, and you'll find some of that in the report as well. But the goal is to observe the data, but to look at the findings below it. But definitely a little bit of a nerd alert for you when it comes to data analysis. I excel, bit of a 1980s shot there of Bill Gates, but there is a little bit of data. So let's get into that and give you a snapshot, an evidence base, if you like, a data-driven social licence to operate summary that this report was. Just on some of the big findings, this was fascinating to see just the scale of the Christian schooling sector in Queensland. Now, I mentioned last night 4 in 5 independent schools in Australia has a religious affiliation, but your impacts are beyond those who have that religious affiliation. There are 2.4 million Queenslanders who identify with Christianity, but there's a group that's as large again who are warm and supportive of Christianity that themselves don't say Christianity is their faith or religion in the census. In other words, 4 in 5 Australians are warm or at least supportive of the freedoms and the rights of Christians. Pretty significant results there. Now, we saw last night that 21% of the population attend church regularly, and that's the key target market of yours. But keep in mind, based on that the church that doesn't go to church is even larger than the church that does, because while 21% say Christianity and attend church, 23% say Christianity but don't at all attend. And you draw from that group. You draw from those who might be the churchgoers. You draw from those who identify their faith as Christianity, although they're not regular. And you draw from those even beyond that who want those values, even though themselves they don't say that they are Christians. 59% of the registered Christian schools in Australia, in Queensland, of that group, 45% are with the ACS. So your schools, ACS schools, represent 28,000 students, and that impact is phenomenal. But But what I want to say is that while that's massive, and while we're seeing the growth to independent schools generally and to Christian schools specifically, you're seeing that. You're seeing waiting lists. You're seeing the opportunities to start new campuses of your schools here in Queensland because of that growth to those looking for that values-based Christian education, but also because of the demographic growth. And I just want to do a little deep dive into the demographic growth in Queensland for a moment. And so another little census alert for you. We'll deal with some data here. The national population has just had the biggest increase that it's ever had. Now, the census data that came out from the 2021 census showed that the 5-year growth from the prior census was the biggest 5-year growth in population our nation has ever seen. But in the last 12 months, we've seen another new record, at least from a migration perspective, 400,000 net arrivals. And net migration is the biggest factor of our population growth, a number that has never before been seen. Now, partly that was for government policy to allow a little bit of catch-up around shortfalls in skills visas and students, overseas students at the tertiary level. But 400,000 is a big number, and so the population is growing. But if we look at where the crossroads of growth are, they're right here in this state of Queensland. In fact, if we look from the census data at the 10 largest growing local government areas that have seen the biggest population increase in 5 years, have a look at the list there. This is the 10 nationally, and 5 out of the 10 are right here in Queensland. Number 1 being Brisbane, number 3 being Gold Coast, and here we are sitting at the 7th fastest growing local government area in the nation at the moment on the Sunshine Coast. If we look at what's happened in the last 12 months, that trend has continued apace. The 2022 calendar year increase in population shows that the fastest growing state in Australia at the moment is Queensland. Now, this is remarkable. Let's just consider this for a moment. New South Wales has 3 million more people than Queensland. It's got a population 57% larger than Queensland's, but Queensland's growth in the last year, it was 76% larger than that of New South Wales. So the growth is on here in this state. The big question is why? Well, if we look at the growth of the other states, they're seeing natural increase and they're seeing net overseas migration. Natural increase, as you can see in light blue, net overseas migration in orange. But what we have in both New South Wales and Victoria is a net loss of people from an interstate migration perspective. Each of those states loses more people to the rest of Australia than they gain. Here we've got the triple green light right here in Queensland, where you've got that massive net internal migration growth, and you're seeing that with those moving to your communities. You're seeing that with those arriving to your school that aren't long-term locals. They've come from interstate, and that trend is set to continue as we see this growth to the north. You've got a little bit of growth to the west in terms of WA, just hitting the positives in internal migration, but certainly it's really happening here. So you can expect that demographic growth and also that worldview growth to drive the populations in your schools. Well, the data found that, and this was one of the themes, a Christian education positively impacts students well into their future. We've got parents that are well aware of the trends. We discussed some of those last night, and they're looking for forward-focused education that can give their children a grounding to deal with the trends and the changes that are upon them. Just some of the key findings here. The key challenges children will face in life after school versus how effective their parents think their child's school is in the following areas. Increased use of technology. So it's a big challenge, but even beyond the challenge, more than meeting it, is the education that you're providing in your schools. Global uncertainty is a big challenge, and again, a big proportion of parents there saying they're feeling that being met in the schools. Increased digital interaction is something of the future in red, and the schools are meeting that need. Faster pace of change is a certainty, say 40%, and yet even more is the preparedness that their children are receiving through your schools in dealing with that. You know, we've always dealt with change in our society. Change is nothing new, but what we're dealing with today is an increased velocity of change, a broader scale of change, the global nature of the confluence of these trends as they come together. And we've just talked already about the demographic growth trend with the worldview growth trend, the social trends coming together to lead to growth in student enrolments in your schools. The confluence, the multifactorial nature of trends and change today is phenomenal. And you add to that generational change, a new generation being shaped in a new era, and that brings about new change as well. A quick snapshot of the generations that we have that are part of your school communities. You know, you've got the grandparents' generation being more hands-on in the drop-off and pick-up of the grandchildren. Many of the fees, if you do some analysis, and we've had that done for some schools, are being paid not by the parents' account or under the parents' names. It's grandparents, it's others that are supporting that. So you've got the builders and the baby boomers involved. You've got the parents of today, the Gen X, and now the millennials, the Gen Ys, as your parents, and of course as your staff members. But the students today, Generation Z, born from 1995 to 2009, and now Generation Alpha from 2010 on as your students. Generational change coming in a time of demographic change and social trends, and of course digital transformation. They're being shaped in the great screen age, and this is creating a generation gap between the parents and the children. We've found in our research, in our studies of parents, that this is where they really feel out of their depth, where they feel there's a sense that their children are more in touch and connected and engaged with the trends in this regard than they are. Now, the parents grew up with screens, but they looked a little bit more like this. You remember this? Nothing made you happier than seeing this when you walked in the classroom. The TV and the VCR strapped together on that trolley. You knew it was going to be an exciting lesson. That wouldn't motivate the students of today. They've got the screen in the pocket, and they don't need that trolley to be wheeled in anymore. We found in this study of Generation Z, 75% of them check their device within the first 3 minutes of waking up. This is the screen-reliant generation. And the screens are becoming more immersive. The metaverse has emerged. This is not where you put on the VR headset, but this is a multiplayer, immersive experience, whether it be games like Fortnite and Minecraft, or whether it be even the activities and the gathering points that now these immersive experiences through an avatar have created for them. I see people even spending money in this realm. Virtual land within the metaverse recently sold for $2.43 million. Not necessarily the most sound investment, because I saw someone sharing this meme: owning land in the metaverse one day, son, all of this will be yours. That's an exciting aspiration, perhaps not for the next generation. These things come and go, but certainly the digital immersion is growing. And while we might, one day, is there really a future for Bitcoin and for NFTs and for owning virtual currency? Think about the experience of Generation Alpha. Their first commercial experience has been spending money that was not tangible, cyber currency, if you like, through an iTunes account or through Robux or some other digital form, to buy intangibles, perhaps a battle pass on one of these games like Fortnite, perhaps a skin or something for their avatar, virtual currency in a virtual environment for non-tangible outcomes. They're part of this. Now we've got ChatGPT and the AI transformation, which I know has caused ructions in the education sector since it emerged in January. Someone shared this meme: ChatGPT, and there goes 5,000 years of accumulated human knowledge and know-how. It has created some uncertainties for your teachers, no doubt. But that's the context, that's the environment in which you are operating. What you give is not just a response to the fads, if you like, to the novelty of the change, but a grounding to respond to the reality of the non-stop change ahead. Christian schools are developing global citizens. That's what this data found. Christian schools play a central role in developing students to be good citizens and contributors to society here, but with that global perspective. 90% of parents, again from the study, those parents of your schools, believe their child's school encourages students to become better citizens and contributors to society. They have that other focus. They're outwardly motivated to make a difference. This is the percentage who strongly or somewhat agree Christian schools play an active role in the following. Preparedness for the future, say nearly 9 in 10. Interpersonal skills, say another 9 in 10. Leadership, say almost 9 in 10. And again, this is strongly or somewhat agreeing with this, so it's pretty significant there. And critical thinking skills there as well. These are the transferable skills, the life skills, those that won't be outsourced to technology, those that will future-proof them for the changes ahead. And the parents are saying your schools are doing a great job in that regard. Think about the areas of change that we're seeing: generational and social, demographic and political, technological, and even future of work, more careers, more roles, lifelong learning, environment issues and global trends, economic volatility as well. And schools are at the crossroads of all of this, because not only are you dealing with the reality of this milieu, but you're dealing with the youngest generation, who tend to be the early adopters of these things, whether they be technology or cultural trends. And so you're training and equipping the youngest in a global realm with these contexts of changing winds around you. We wrote in this Future of Education report, never in the history of the world has work and education to that extent been more accessible, more flexible, yet more vulnerable to disruption. Where we work and learn has changed. The future of work and what we need has changed. But you've got this focus on equipping these students to thrive and to have some solidity amidst these changes. Parents' experience does not match the media portrayal of Christian schools. This was a key theme that emerged from the research, that there is a perception out there of private schools. There's a stereotype that might exist of religious schools that the parents are saying is not their experience or reality. Do you believe that Christian schools are portrayed in the media, in the way that they're portrayed in the media accurately reflects your experience? And the minority is saying yes. You've got 42% saying not really, and another 18% saying not at all. Much more likely to say definitely no than definitely yes. There's a difference in how the media portrayal is compared to what their experience has been. This is the percentage of parents who believe the following aspects are misrepresented in the media. The financial wealth of Christian schools, particularly because it often comes under the banner of private schools, and those sandstone, you might say, elite schools tend to be what gets the media attention. And if people think you're at a non-government school, you're at a private school, therefore that's the experience. The exclusivity of the school community, a sense that it's only for the people within a particular denomination or faith group, and that it's really about excluding others, whereas that that's not the case, and it's missional in focus and orientation. Support available to LGBT students. This is one that the media loves to get into, that these schools are excluding and these schools are anti-individuals. And while all of our schools are clear in beliefs and foundations and the best way forward and have a clarity of communication and development of students, they're welcoming and supportive of all. We put down here, or this came through as well, the misrepresentation, according to, again, parents, the overemphasis on the spiritual development of students, that these are purely focused on Bible to the loss of other subjects. That's not the case. A school is an evangelistic organisation, is one of the stereotypes, and the time allocated to teach academic subjects over Christian subjects is skewed, and a lot of parents see that the communication in the media is not what they have. So there's a sense that growing up today, parents are looking at the world. It was different to the world they experienced. It's shifting at a fast rate of knots away from their views and values and really are worried for their children. There's a sense that the media, not just the political shifts, are quite different and bringing cool winds to the door of their household. I saw some memes when just life is sort of not lining up with what you expect. Someone here says, this is why I have trust issues, non-stick fry pan, I get frustrated. When things just don't sit, when things just aren't being used in the right way. I saw someone's effort with the doorstop here, just not great. I think there's a sense to which parents are resonating with that. If we think back, let's think back to at least our perception of the 1950s in Australia and think about community values and worldviews. Where the Australian church sat and where mainstream society sat, there was large overlap, maybe even significant overlap there. There was not a sense of society being at odds, at least in terms of polite morality and the general governance of organisations between society and the church. Wind forward to the 1980s, and there was clearly more of a separation. And the 1980s saw the dawn of the Christian schooling movement across Australia, borne out largely because of this yearning gap between societal values and Christian values. Well, that prompted the birth of the Christian schooling movement. Where are we at today? Well, that gap is greater than ever. In fact, there's very little overlap at all. And now it's not just those active, committed Christians who are motivated around Christian schooling, it's the broader community as well who are seeing a big shift in, even though they're not Christian in any practical sense, what they see out there is not what they want for their future or their family, and so they're headed your way. And that's what this data showed. Families choose Christian schools for their Christian values and ethos. We found, it's in the report, parents are most likely to have chosen a school within the ACS network for their child for the following reasons. Number one, the morals and values. Number two here, the alignment of those values. Number three, the Christ-centred focus, and then the nurturing environment. So the values, the ethos, the worldview, the foundation, and the resonance they have with that. 4 in 5 parents, 79%, agree strongly or somewhat that the Christian ethos of the school was an important factor in their decision to send their child to a Christian school. Your schools, the recognition of the parents, are not just Christian in name, it's not just a historical connection, it's not just something of brand, it's truly part of the culture. And they want that, and they're connecting with that, and that came through strongly. This supportive environment is a product of Christian schools proving extremely a vary in the following areas. The quality teaching staff, you've got the majority of parents acknowledging that. The school community, high academic achievement, good communication between school and home, and reputation, and finally pastoral care. We looked at some of the challenges that teachers are saying students are experiencing. We looked at this last night in one of those graphs. The cyberbullying, the mental health issues, a sense of pressure in their life and pressure to grow up faster, just what they're exposed to through the channels, through the social media. And here we've got parents saying, it's the pastoral care, it's the support, it's the reputation, it's the community, it's the environment, as well as, of course, those values and the quality of education that is so key to their experience. And importantly, Christian schools are welcoming and supportive communities. Your lighthouse schools, not drawbridge schools. You connect with the community and engage with that community, and that increasingly is going to be important. That social value to license, social value to operate, that social license, if you like, is an increasing factor of anything that is publicly funded now and into the future. We have to show that the public benefit that we receive through, whether it be tax benefits, whether it be licensing to operate schools, or whether it be indeed government funding, flows beyond just our communities to the broader community as well. I saw a school keen to advertise their upcoming literacy night. They put the big ad out the front of the school, which was great, but unfortunately didn't give a lot of confidence to the community out there. Yours are not like that. You're giving confident. This is a percentage who describe their school community as welcoming, 81%, as supportive, say 76% of your parents, respectful, say 76%, inclusive, say almost half, empowering and reliable. These are positive responses from parents who see the schools perhaps contrary to what those stereotypes are. Christian schools stand out from their peers by prioritising strong partnerships between the school leadership and the school community. As has been the experience of some parents, they have felt that their previous experience with schools has been that it's been at odds with their own values, that it's indeed had an agenda that's perhaps been more progressive than where they see it, or certainly taking a direction different to their own. But what they're seeing in your schools is this alignment, that parents are entrusted by God with children, and you as schools come around the parents in that responsibility, and there is that alignment and integration. 88% of parents believe their child's school effectively builds a strong relationship between the classroom and home that helps their child excel, and this is the percentage, say extremely, very, or somewhat effective in that regard, almost 9 in 10. In fact, parents see their child's school as having an extremely or very positive impact on firstly their child, and beyond that their family. I mean, this is the great thing. Your schools are not educational institutions for students, but are communities of families, and that is being experienced. And the broader community as well. And you see that in the car park, at the drop-off. You see that at the cafes or at the after-school activities. You see that interaction of parents, and that, I'm sure, gives you a great signal that you're doing well on that community connection. Their personal relationships, as you align with their own authority as parents and values and upbringing and equip them, and their parenting style as well. We're in an era where parents are looking beyond their own skills to support around how to parent in a digital era and how to raise their children in this world of change, and you're supportive in that regard, the parents are saying. Christian schools develop servant-hearted leaders. We're in an era where leadership development we see portrayed, where schools will say we develop future leaders, but the distinction of Christian schooling is it's actually servant leadership. Let me put up a quote from Robert K. Greenleaf. He literally wrote the book on servant leadership called Servant Leadership. He coined the term in 1970, or at least it was published then in his first work there. Some of you are across his writing, I'm sure. And it's summed up well in this statement in his first book. The servant leader is servant first. It begins with the natural feeling that one wants to serve. Then conscious choice brings one to aspire to lead. And this, of course, was not his invention, but that of Christ, who founded the upside-down kingdom, where he said, you want to be first, you've got to be last. When he said, you want to be great, you've got to be like a child. Where he said, it's more blessed to give than to receive. And where, as we sing in that song, the servant king, hands that flung stars into space to cruel nails surrendered. And so he set that example that we follow in his footsteps in this kingdom that is so different to every other kingdom, and perhaps gets our world to take a second look. But that's because it's an upside-down kingdom where the king of the universe condescended to be a man and stooped to wash those very dirty feet of those very ordinary disciples. And we follow in his footsteps. And that's picked up by these parents. 90% of Christian school students are involved in community service activities. It's teaching and it's learning and it's service. That's what you're about. And so parents have recognised this, they've experienced this. It's been a visceral experience for them in this journey, and that comes through strongly in the research. And so parents believe that removing Christian schools would be a loss for society. You know, I think that some of the advocacy work that reports like this, that HCS is engaged in, the connections that you have, I'm sure, with your local members of parliament, is important, because the buffer, if you like, between those that are active as Christians and those that are supportive but not Christians themselves, that is getting thinner, as we saw with the census results. We might think, well, whether it was 64% as it was 15 years ago. We're now 44% that say their faith is Christianity. Doesn't really affect us. That's just cultural Christianity. The numbers going to church haven't changed, but it does have an impact. Christianity figure, that represents a lot of people that are warm to Christianity and indeed open to those invitations, open to exploring the things of the Christian faith. But secondly, at a societal level, that's, if you like, the buffer at the church door, and those cold winds are blowing closer to the door, and there's more pushback against Christian things, particularly when there's that public benefit. And so discussions like this, data around this, being prepared to have these conversations is important because the warmth, the freedoms and the support that we enjoy may not always be the case. Parents believe removing Christian schools would remove institutions that provide valuable holistic development and an important social benefit. And what your schools are producing are leaders who contribute, are students who are community-minded, are families who are connected, are places of community and gathering points that are equipping the broader society and making a broad contribution. You have the timeless truth that is your foundation and doesn't change, but you adapt and respond to the trends, and that's important as well. We wrote in this Future of Education report, the strength of a school comes from its stories and traditions, but its future rests in its relevance and innovation. We do not compromise on the timeless truth, but we understand the emerging trends, and it's both of those that provide the relevance of our schools. If we didn't have that timeless foundation on Christ and his unchanging word, we would be irrelevant as Christian schools. If we didn't respond to the trends and the changes, we would be irrelevant as schools that connect in this era. So I guess the big question is, how do we respond in all of this? And hopefully some of that research will, you can unpack that a little more through your reading, but also through the workshop that we're going to move to. But just let me leave you with 4 words to keep in mind, 4 takeaways, if you like, as I conclude this sort of download of the research findings. Now, there used to be 3 R's of education, and 2 of them weren't even R's. Writing and arithmetic. That doesn't work with the acronym here. But I thought I'd leave you with 4 R's of Christian education, and they're all genuine R's. And the first is keeping it real. We've got to be authentic in what we do in this era. Recognise the foibles and the failures that we will inevitably have as complex communities where not everyone is going to be the perfect exemplar without fault of what we espouse. Authenticity is key. We've got to be real. I'm not sure what went wrong with the design department here, but it lacked a bit of reality, and the irony was obvious to all. And something was tragically wrong with the painting team that's putting signs outside the school, and really lacked credibility there. Authenticity, transparency, being real, that is key for us, but being relevant, responding and adjusting and adapting, not being locked in the past. Now, yes, if it's an issue of truth, of course, but if it's an issue of style, we adapt. Paul, in his epistles, was of course so strong on the truth, but he was so pragmatic around methods, wasn't he? I mean, it was modern ship transport that allowed him to take the gospel across the Mediterranean to new lands, moving from Asia Minor there even into Europe. It was the Roman roads that allowed the spread of the gospel. It was Koine Greek that allowed that spread of his epistles in those early days. And I'm sure if he was in this era with the internet and social media and the platforms we have, he would be using them, if you like, the modern Roman roads. Social media, the modern Koine Greek, he'd be engaged with that. So relevance, even amidst our foundations on the rock, that is the same yesterday and today and forever. I saw a sign, though, that sort of didn't remain relevant. It was a safety sign at a beach in the US. It says here, if you see someone drowning, and there in the middle, that's supposed to be a stick figure of someone with their arms raised, but it looks far too much like LOL. And to LOL is not the right response when someone is struggling out there in the water. Keep it real, keep it relevant. Thirdly, keep it responsive. I think that We have to communicate in ways that make sense. We have to distill our content. We have to, in terms of the advocacy, in terms of communicating, understand what the expectation is out there and communicate in ways that make sense. That's where hopefully the infographic or some of the visuals might help in distilling it down. We're in an era that is time poor. You've perhaps seen this one. You know, you're desperate for an answer when you look at the second page of Google. You know, if it's not right there, we sort of move on. That's the era that we're in. There's a 4-letter acronym that's emerged with Generation Z. If you send a long email or maybe a long attachment in that email, you might get a response TLDR. That stands for too long, didn't read. So we don't want to be in that TLDR category. Be responsive, be real, relevant, responsive, and finally relational. That is core to it all. And so many of the ructions that emerge, the problems we have, the misunderstandings that we experience, I think can be resolved through that relationship. You know, when the media are writing stories about Christian institutions and all of us, maybe church hat on, maybe a Christian community hat on, maybe your school hat on, you get pushback from time to time. They're not trying to necessarily be troublemakers or muckrakers. Many of them really are fighting the zealous fight and trying to expose problems in the church or in Christian organisations, and they're doing it from a very zealous and valid perspective. They just haven't understood it all and need perhaps a broader perspective or to hear our view on it. But that's where the relational connection can solve things. I saw someone invented a problem in some lunch rooms of work. Perhaps there's a toxic environment. People have been pinching other people's lunch from the fridge. I'm sure it doesn't take place in your staff rooms, but this fellow invented the anti-theft lunch bag. He got these sandwich bags and printed black paint on the outside, and you can see the result. Not safe and safe. I mean, no one's going to mess with your lunch when it's in the anti-theft lunch bag. Pretty good solution to perhaps a toxic problem there. Keeping it relational is key. Keep it real, relevant, responsive, and relational. Well, now it is over to you, and Ruth's going to come up and maybe move us through a bit of Q&A and then lead us through this discussion time. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mark, first and foremost for such a wealth of information. And I don't know about you, but reading all of this last night and hearing it again today, don't you feel good? Don't you feel wonderful about the fact that what we are doing is actually having such a positive effect? And I'll be encouraged to jump back into the fray tomorrow when we return back to our schools. And we also want to thank Mark, because he did that in a much shorter amount of time than he was allocated. For the next few minutes, we just want to open the floor for any questions that you may have about today's presentation or from anything from last night. There is a wealth of information, but then maybe just may pique your interest, and there may be something that you would like to ask Mark. We've just got a few minutes to do that before we move into our workshops. I see that hand, Jess.
Thank you so much, Mark, and I really what Cheryl said about the books. My copy of Gen Alpha, I had posters on every second page of actions and takeaways. I'm just thinking about our staff and all of this, and we spoke about servant leadership and that really tailors in a group of well. That's exactly the type of leadership model that I think right now Christian schools have an advantage theoretically over that, and I hope our staff benefit from that. But I'm thinking about in terms of how we look after our staff, you know, we've got teacher workload on one hand and had Mike from the organisation speak to that. On the other hand, general well-being and community and connection, we play to our strengths in terms of either or question and spoke. But I'm just wondering if you have insight into what's working really well for this.
It's a great question. Priorities, what do you do? Where do you focus? I know that, and we've been part of surveying a lot of schools, parent surveys, and so I've seen a lot of results, and we've benchmarked some of that. And you definitely at times, so if we think about parents' priorities, is it academic development or is it the holistic development? Should we ensure that they're well prepared for those university opportunities, or is it the foundation of values and faith? Well, when you get the feedback from the parent surveys, they're often pushing and saying, oh, we want the academics, we need that, let's keep pushing ahead there. And so clearly, we don't want to take our foot off the pedal there. Clearly, we are schools, we're educational organisations or communities. However, every time we have results like this, it was clear again from this, parents are saying, but actually what's driving them to your schools, why they've chosen it, what led them in the door is the values, is the ethos, is the foundation, is the pastoral care, is the relationships, is the community. So if you had to choose, and I don't think you want to, and I don't think it's only theoretical that you would need to, but if you had to, I would not let up on the foundations, the values, the Christian community that you provide and that you are, because what's happening out there is there are far more pathways into education. It's not just about that university entrance mark anymore. And I know that other sectors are really focused on that, with the selective schools, particularly in New South Wales. It's gone crazy with opportunity classes, selective schools, and a focus in that regard. But that's not mainstream, that's not broad across the community, those that are looking for that. In fact, we saw there's an exodus from the sector that's most providing that in terms of the government sector to the pastoral care, values-based, holistic focus of the independent sector. So I would, in a priority there, I would say, whatever you do, don't jettison the stuff that you do so well that you're known for and that is making a difference in the families and for the parents. That is your pastoral, your care, your community, and that truth foundation, while pushing down and leaning into the educational side. On the how do we go with staff, because all of this takes time and relationships are organic, you can't cram it, you can't just get it done in that 20 minutes that you have at the end of a lesson, and that's the key stuff. Solving the problems, being open and available for the parents takes a lot of time, and then there's the academics, and then there's the increasing bureaucracy that you saw in that slide yesterday. That's one of those key issues for the future that already principals are identifying. How do you deal with that and look after your staff's own well-being? I would say, and it's one of those key points yesterday, ensuring your staff are looked after has to be that priority, because if you don't have them there and them in a good place, then you don't have anything. We've already got a skills shortage. As you know, it's already hard amidst your growth to find the staff and to perhaps fill that. That's one of the bottlenecks you've got to deal with. And so we don't want the high turnover there. So I would say prioritising the staff is key. There was a book I read some years back called The Customer Comes Second. And the point of the title of the book, and really the book, was that the staff come first. They're your internal customer, if you like. They can't look after the external customer if they are not looked after and full and thriving and flourishing themselves. So make sure you do look after the staff. That would be a priority there. But of course, these are theoretical. It's both the students, the parents, and the staff. It's both the academics and the Christian Foundation, but do keep those things in mind.
Thank you, Ron.
Mark, thank you for the research findings. And one of the findings related to media. From your broader knowledge, how does a sector like this communicate that kind of information to a media that doesn't seem to want to hear it? Have you any insights there from your knowledge of the broader?
Yeah, thanks, Ron. How do we communicate these realities that we all know, what we've just seen, to a media that doesn't seem to want to hear it? Firstly, I would say the media doesn't even have the language, doesn't have a framework to even know what we're on about as evangelical Christians. They don't even have the terminology. And it's as basic as that. I get to speak to a few journalists in my role, and when Christian things come up, they don't even know what term to use. What is this? Is this born again? Is this fundamental? Is this evangelical? And they confuse evangelical with evangelistic, and there's just no sense of it. And what is Christian versus Catholic, and what's the whole framework in which you sit? And they'll see one example that might be a fringe experience of a Christian organisation or church or something that most of us in the room would say, oh, that's a little unusual, and that's not typical of us as believers, and that becomes, you know, what these Christians are about. So I think part of it is just trying to build the relationships with journalists, maybe doing on the educational round, or maybe local journalists that you have, or maybe reaching out to some to try to help them just get an understanding of what you're about. I think that we can be proactive in our media engagement. We can get them to come along and share some of those stories. In fact, I think we have to. Now, they're not going to come along and necessarily publish stories about everything that we do, but if we just keep that communication up, it's going to be great. And I would say be proactive in building the relationships with members of parliament and politicians as well, because that's important. I've seen some disaster stories in churches and other places where even their local members have sort of thrown the institution under the bus, and often that's because they haven't had that relational connection, and so they haven't been able to stand by that constituent group. But yes, Ron, it's true that they don't necessarily want to tell the story because either they don't understand, or maybe beyond that, it's just not sort of interest to them. But I think we can only do what we can do, and through intentional efforts and prayer, through, as Jesus said, you know, let your light shine before others, so that they may praise not you, may praise your Father which is in heaven. So we have to let our light shine, and we have to be proactive, because God gets the glory. I think there's this false humility and meekness that we bring, where we think we don't want to tell that story. Tell the story. It's not about building your brand. It's about glorifying God through, we would all acknowledge, through what has happened in the Christian schooling movement, the numbers, the growth, the stories of your own schools and the one I'm part of. To God be the glory, like God alone can do that. And so we want him to be glorified, to tell the story, because it's a story to be told.
Thanks, Leighton.
Mark, there's some wonderful encouragement and feedback there, and you've got that bigger picture over this study and other studies from schools and groups. Are there any cautionary emerging trends that you might have should be on our radar, as well as the encouragement?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, just to highlight, and I alluded to a few of them, that the good times that we're enjoying now in terms of support and funding and our standing in the education sector, in the government backing, may not always be to the extent that it is. I mean, I just alluded to an experience we've had in our school, group of schools, and it's just getting a little bit harder to sort of make our point and highlight our distinctives, a sense that, well, if government's involved, you should look like all of our government schools. And so that's a little flag for me as to maybe where there is a trend. So we've just got to be aware of that. And I think, again, being proactive, exactly as you are, with social license and impact reporting like this, with building those relationships, with gathering the stories, and with those positive media attention. Secondly, be aware of those. How does the media work? They'll take a little situation, a micro situation, you know, a student struggling with their gender identity, a disgruntled parent that's had some issue, maybe a debt that's accrued and the family's got a really warm tough story around that, and suddenly there's a debt collector. It's those little things that become a great case study for the media, who might want to dig in a little bit into what's going on. So I would be, as Christ said, you know, innocent as doves but wise as serpents in that regard. We are in an era where parents have leverage, and maybe they're not even parents. Maybe they're just aware of something in the school. They've got some connection somehow, but it's not hard to get a trending hashtag or a little bit of a petition going, a bit of leverage as an individual against the school, and we're up against it. So I would be aware of those little spot fires that might become something bigger and try to manage those. And we would anyway, wouldn't we, in terms of Christian relationship. But just be aware of that, because there's leverage that exists now that didn't exist in the past. And if there was a problem, well, you just handle it within the confidentiality, and there was great trust and faith, and you didn't feel that could go anywhere, and suddenly it can. So I would be aware of that. I would be aware around the issues around money as well. We run this, every few years we run this Faith and Belief in Australia report, and we survey non-churchgoers, and we say, what are the issues you have around the church? What's your perception of the church and Christians? And when we first ran it about 10 years ago, it was abuse issues, sexual and other abuse of church. And then we saw the Royal Commission roll through. And it was just interesting when I've looked back at the findings, I thought, wow, the community, that was a flashpoint for them even before the church sort of saw it. And we were almost taken by surprise by the Royal Commission into historical sexual abuse. Many of our churches, because we weren't aware of the extent of that and the damage there. And then a few years later, we saw the issues around gender identity emerge as one of the pushbacks. You know, Christians are intolerant, they're bigoted, they exclude us, etc. And obviously we've seen the gender and sexuality side emerge, and Christians have been put in the naughty corner, or been perhaps wedged in that regard beyond, I think, what is fair and what is our relational approach. But the next one that I've seen is issues around money, and we're probably already seeing that a little bit. But Aussies are the first to open their wallets and support charities and not-for-profits and community organisations that are doing good. But if they see there's any sense of exploitation or profiteering or misuse of money, they're the first to call that out. And I think as Christians we have to be cautious about that. And it's not even that there's a misuse of money, but maybe it's just intimidating society as we grow in our asset base or what is being put forward. And that's why some of those sandstone schools really come under the gun. That's the challenge that they have, is the financial funding and some of the outcomes of that. It's not to say don't invest in your schools, do so, but just be mindful that that's, I think, the next battleground. It's already an emerging one to be aware of in terms of the media and public sentiment around our schools.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Mark. So